Okay, this is going to be a quick, easy tutorial on how I like to edit my studio headshots inside of Capture One Pro. In front of me at the moment I have my raw studio headshot image, but before we delve into the editing side of things, I'm just going to quickly take you through the way I like to shoot my studio headshots. Now this isn't exactly the way I shoot them, but it's something similar to this. No frills, sort of one light, studio set up against a white paper backdrop. I don't often use a reflector. I have my model sitting a fair way out from the white backdrop to achieve the grey, and I position myself at sort of eye level on the other side of the studio with a 90mm lens, and that's about it. Really simple, cheap, easy studio setup. A couple of things to sort of remember is it's quite important to get your model to turn up with their makeup well done, and their hair well done, and have them in a really nice relaxed atmosphere. The other little thing I like to do is keep the neckline really nice and clean and clear, and if you have it available, I tend to add a little bit of body oil or baby oil just to the collarbone, just to sort of balance out the highlights. I think it sort of makes the image pop a little bit more. Okay, let's get right into it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop my image up, just so we can get a little bit closer in. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of, no, I'm going to crop it up a little, sort of as I can see the finished image. I could leave a little bit of headroom, and we could go in and remove those baby hairs, those flyaways just on the top of her head with a layer adjustment. But for this tutorial, I think I'll leave them alone. We won't go into that. If you've got the time, you can go in and clean all that up. But this is really just more about the color adjustments. Now I'm opting for a 4:5 crop on this image instead of retaining the original 3:2 crop. I don't really know why that's. Seems to have a bit of a be rotated a little bit. It's better. Let's keep it nice and clean. I used to shoot all of my studio headshots in portrait, but recently I've been shooting more landscape, and I quite like going for the squarer 4:5 crop instead of that 3:2 crop. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now before I start making any adjustment through the menu, I like to just go in and remove any obvious blemishes I can see. I'm very lucky with this image. Our model is almost has flawless skin, so it shouldn't be too much to get rid of. Just the obvious little spots and marks. And the makeup has been done very well, so it makes my job a lot easier. I'm not going to go in and never remove moles, or I try not to remove scars unless I've been specifically asked to by the model. We want a nice natural looking image, and if you start removing absolutely everything, it'll look weird. Just anything that looks out of place. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Okay, let's get into the proper editing. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my focus menu and make some sharpening adjustments. Now, I've got these menus set up the way that I like to have them set up, and you can obviously set them up however you want to have them set up. The defaults in Capture One I find are very clumsy. Everything's sort of all over the place for me. So just bumping up the sharpening. Film grain, I like to add a little bit of silver rich. And that's about it. That's all I'm going to do to the sharpening and sort of clarity side of things. I'm going to pop into my color adjustments now. And even though I think I did white balance in the studio, the backdrop looks quite blue. So we're going to try and aim to balance that backdrop out so that we have more of a perfect grey. Now I know where I'm heading with these settings, but obviously every image that you shoot is different, so you're gonna have to tweak these to suit your purposes, but at least you'll have you know, some guidelines. Exposure, contrast, brightness, saturation. I'm going to leave them all alone at the moment. I'm going to come straight down to curves, make some adjustments to the Luma curve, bring up that top anchor. Now, instead of creating, I'm going to put the 3 points on my line, but instead of creating the traditional S bend, I'm going to actually bring out the shadows a little bit more with the one of the lower anchor points. And I pretty much just stay in the curves adjustment. It's a very, very powerful tool. I think out of all the adjustments you can make the most impact with your curves adjustments. And you really just want to sort of have a bit of a play around until you're happy with the way things are looking. Now we want to have the contrast on her skin, and I'll show you why, because this lends itself well to the skin smoothing process that we're going to use after we finish up in Capture One. But we don't want to take it too far so that we end up with things that are, you know, the highlights blowing out. We still want to have it relatively subtle. Look, that's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Okay. Yeah, let's leave that alone. Move on to now. We've still got a bit of separation in the color channels now, so we still haven't got that perfect grey. And you can see with the color readout numbers at the top, there's still a bit of difference, a bit of variance in the between the color channels, and you can see it obviously on the histogram as well. So I'm just going to make a couple of adjustments to the top anchor points of my individual color channels. I don't want to adjust them too much because every adjustment that we make is adjusting her skin tone. So I'm going to probably leave that alone there. We'll leave high dynamic range alone. We'll leave the vignette alone. I don't really want to adjust that. We're going to come into our color editing tool and we're going to make an advanced color adjustment. So skip the basic one, go straight to the advanced. We're going to make a selection on the backdrop. Now it's carved out and it's confirmed the fact that the backdrop is still a little bit blue. It's carved out a wedge on the blue side of the color wheel. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust that wedge, bring it out to sort of somewhere below just the midtones, and I'm going to remove the saturation. Bring it well down, all the way down to -100. And now if we go back to, the histogram, you can see that that has brought my color channels closer into alignment. It's still, the red is still a little low, so I'm just going to bump that up. Yeah, that's brought it into line. Even better. Perfect. Excellent. And her skin tone still looks pretty good. It's a little on the warmer side, but it still looks pretty good. I might just grab that bottom anchor point, the red, and just bump that in a couple of notches just to bring the red down in the shadow slightly. I don't want to go too far, but that's just even things out enough. Okay. Last thing I'm going to do in Capture One before we go on to skin smoothing is I'm going to make a mask layer, and I'm going to call it eyes. Now, if your model has particularly colorful eyes, you can create a layer to adjust, to just make those colors pop a little bit more. But for our model here, we're just going to create a simple eye layer and bump up the clarity in the eyes. So just taking that sharpness just to the next level. Clarity, actually we'll leave clarity alone. We'll just pump up the structure and maybe bump up the contrast ever so slightly. Let's get our brush going. I'm going to make this adjustment to the entire eye area. And I'll just pop the mask on so you can see where I'm adjusting. Nice subtle adjustment. I don't want to take it too far. You don't want to over sharpen things because it ends up looking unnatural. But you know what? Let's do it on the lips as well. Just make her lips pop a little bit more. Looks good. Let's remove the mask, and you can see it's just. I think I probably you know what, second thoughts, let's get rid of it from the lips because it's just over sharpening it too much for my liking. Let's remove that. Let's keep it just on the eyes. And you can see it's just made them pop. When we're zoomed in this far, it does look over sharpened, but when we zoom back out, it's natural, it's nice. It's yeah, it's the effect that I want. You can toggle that on and off. And you can see it's just adding that extra level of sharpness, making the eyes pop a little bit more. Okay, like I said, you can go in and remove all those baby hairs if you really want to with a clone or a heal layer, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we're just going to leave them alone. And we're pretty much done in Capture One. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to, we're actually going to export this image. Let's just do it quickly through our, yep, that all looks good. Let's export this image as a JPEG. And we're going to pop into one of my favorite programs, SkinFiner. SkinFiner is a standalone program. It can be used also as a plugin for Photoshop. Currently is not a plugin for Capture One, which is pretty disappointing. So it means you have to leave the program, leave Capture One and then come into SkinFiner as a standalone program. But the effect that SkinFiner is going to give you is an effect that you won't be able to achieve in Capture One. So let's open that headshot that we have just exported. And you'll notice instantly how it's working to smooth out the skin tone of our model. Now over here you have your mask preview, and you can adjust your skin mask top on the right hand side panel, and we want to adjust it so that we're just affecting the skin, not the lips or the eyes or the hair. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That looks good. Excellent. I'll come down to the skin details. A smoothing amount of around 30 to 40 usually works. You can go in and tinker with all these adjustments, but I've got them set 20, 50, 0, and 0. And then the effect that really makes a big difference is your skin tone adjustment. We're going to leave hue alone. Saturation, I bumped up a little bit just to compensate for the contrast, shadow, and highlight adjustments because they tend to knock a little bit out of the saturation. And we're going for a contrast of 20, which obviously adjusts the contrast of your highlights and shadow tones on the skin. Shadow, we haven't adjusted too much because if I drag this down, you'll see what an effect that has. It looks completely unnatural. So we're just going to leave it at -5. And highlight, again, you don't want to take it too far because you end up with something that looks ridiculous. We just want to bump up the highlights to a point that makes the model sort of glow. And that looks pretty good. So if I toggle the on off, you can see what an effect that is having. And the way that we designed the curves adjustment in Capture One lends itself really, really well to the skin smoothing adjustment in SkinFiner. If I zoom in, the great thing about SkinFiner is that we've retained all of those skin details, those fine details, but we've, like I said, made the model glow and just evened out the skin tone and smoothed it out in a really nice, natural way. Okay, it's looking good. Let's go ahead and save that. And I'm going to save it straight over the top of that export. And now if we go back into Capture One, and we go to our output folder, we've already got the green color rating, color tag, and now we can have a look and compare what we started off with to our finished image. And that's it. That's how I like to edit my studio headshots inside of Capture One Pro. Thanks for watching.